Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on 7 tips to avoid data migration disasters. Your host today are myself, Sarah Lester. I'm the marketing manager here at Magic Software UK. And we're also joined by Nick Taylor, who's sales manager here in the UK also.
Good morning, Sarah. Morning, everyone.
Okay, just some quick housekeeping pointers before we start. All lines are on mute, so if you do have any questions, if you can just pop them in the chat box, or the questions box, we'll make sure we jot them down and we'll address them right at the end of the webinar. If we can't get through all the questions, we'll make sure we get someone from the team to follow up with you as soon as possible. So the webinar's set to last about 30 minutes, but if you need to drop off the call, we'll be sending out a recording for all our attendees. So please feel free to rewatch at your leisure or share amongst your colleagues. So without further ado, here's a quick look at today's agenda. I'm going to take you through a brief intro before we begin, before I hand over to Nick as well, who's going to take us through all the really useful stuff. So we'll begin with cleaning up your data, then we'll go on to talk about validating and redefining business rules, checking cross-object dependencies, leveraging automation, relying on relevant expertise, not waiting for the target to actually be ready. Then we'll go on to the most important thing, which is about validating and testing, and then we'll have a quick summary at the end. While some of these points here may seem glaringly obvious, it's absolutely crucial you understand and consider each and every one of these to ensure that your projects, which you're investing a lot in, run as smoothly as possible. Okay, so here are a few interesting and perhaps enlightening facts for you. Firstly, 95% of companies like yours move data in one way or another at least once a year, and I don't know about you, but I was quite surprised it was that frequent actually. So many opportunities for data to potentially go wrong or just messed about with. The risks are obviously huge, but why are we moving data? So 47% of us migrate data due to infrastructure upgrades, but other reasons can include mergers, acquisitions, new platforms. So whether we're talking about ERP, CRM, or other important applications, the transfer of data between systems is always a challenge. The complexity of a data migration often leads to cost overruns and delays. This diagram here on your screen illustrates how the amount of data is lost in different devices. Worryingly, around 68% of data is lost in servers, 50% in desktops and laptops, 66% in mobile devices, and 74% is in backup applications. So this is based on some research that we found by a company called Kroll On Track after surveying nearly 600 IT professionals globally. So when exactly is our data lost? As you can see, around 50% of you lose data while migrating to a new software, 39% when upgrading the operating systems, around 22% of you lose data in the re-imaging of desktop hardware, and so on. It's quite evident that the problems when migrating data are multifold. They can lead to costly downtime, reduced end-user productivity, and as we've mentioned, a loss of important data. If you prepare the project well and plan the process really carefully, you can avoid some of the common errors of data migration. So that leads me nicely onto our first tip, so I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Nick. Thank you, Sarah.
Good morning, everybody. Delighted to have the opportunity to share with you these tips this morning. I know that we're entertaining delegates from across Europe, so we know this is not just a challenge here in the UK, but across the world. And yeah, delighted to share these with you. So let's move straight along with our first tip. And data quality, always a thorny subject, but let's move on with that. Data quality issues are the primary reason, really, that data migration projects take longer and typically cost more than we had anticipated in the first place. So, a little over half of the companies surveyed by back office associates, you'll see on the screen here, suffered losses, problems, and really high costs attributed to poor data quality. The good news is, the positive flip side, if you will, is that 57% of companies enjoyed a real big increase in customer satisfaction when the data quality was addressed correctly. So our first tip is clean up your data, which could also be interpreted as don't transfer your bad habits. Your system may have been perfect in the beginning, but very unlikely, or very likely I should say, that inconsistencies and duplicate data have been introduced over time by different users. So it's really important to clean up the data before moving it over. Stress here that you've got to make sure that you deduplicate the data and fix any data integrity problems before the problems are replicated in your new system. This study here, commissioned by Experian, involved more than 1,400 people across 8 countries and consisted of decision makers across various different departments and various different vertical sectors as well. Top reasons cited for improving the data quality are, not surprisingly really, increasing business efficiency, improving customer satisfaction, and making better informed decisions. Lots of reasons why you might want to improve data quality. I'm sure these others that are listed here will resonate with you guys too. Let's move on to tip 2. Your company's business and validation rules may have changed since the legacy system was first built. Now is the time to make sure that the business rules are current, that any questions or disputed processes are ironed out. Also, it's advisable to see if there are any data fields that need to be changed or added, and that necessary validations are included in the new database. Tip 3, check for all cross-object dependencies. But these are often not discovered until really late in the whole migration process. A complex project might have dozens of different data fields coming in from various applications. Discovering new sources of data or connectivity issues late in this process can really throw off your entire migration timeline. So it's much better to identify all of your external sources of data right up front and make sure that the necessary connections are in place for the new system. Take a look at this diagram. On the left-hand side, we're showing a list of the more common CRM, ERP type applications that we find, certainly, that customers need ready access to. But these external data sources might also include, working around from the bottom, social media feeds, bespoke applications that are unique to your company, data via email, file transfer protocol size, EDI systems. Maybe there's valuable data locked away in legacy green screen databases, for example, in various legacy formats, maybe accessed via web services. In many cases nowadays, we're seeing companies unlocking data from machines. So the whole birth of the Internet of Things. And really, I guess the conundrum is turning this data in combination with more traditional applications into real information. Tip 4, leverage automation. Many projects suffer from cost overruns due to human error, system downtime. While traditional ETL, extraction, transformation, and load tools may seem appealing at the outset, they won't allow you to maximize uptime and maintain interconnected business processes, such as the automatic update of a customer address in your ERP system based on changes recorded in your CRM system. Instead, look for an integration platform that supports process-based integration and automation of stored procedures. Process-based integration merges applications, services, and user operations such that all can respond to ongoing business needs. Think of it as defining how various tools and business activities interact with one another. The result in this case then is an efficient, adaptable workplace dynamic that keeps your organization really competitive. Here's an example. Consider a raw materials producer who uses supply chain management software to monitor their inventory. Whenever the application indicates an impending shortage, the producer must manually notify buyers and they can revise their orders accordingly. But there are two problems with this situation. Firstly, the producer might not notice the shortage in time to notify the buyers. Secondly, the buyers might not receive a warning before an impending shortage becomes a current shortage. So what if you could remove the manual aspect of this arrangement and make it so certain kinds of supply chain data, in this case materials shortage data, automatically triggered a purchase requisition on the buyer side? Then buyers could make timely purchase decisions and avoid the potential pitfalls of unconnected processes. So therefore, an integration platform that has pre-built connectors to the systems that you're migrating can save a whole bunch of time and help you avoid these sorts of errors. It can also let you keep both new and old systems live and updated without the risk of downtime or transaction loss until you are ready to do the full switch. System integration platforms can provide a really effective solution that not only accelerate your data migration project, but can be useful for other system integration projects in the future, therefore providing a really high return on investment. On to tip number 5 now. The complex challenge of data migration projects is frequently underestimated. We see it all the time. It's often regarded as a bit of a diligence exercise after the commissioning of a new system. Each data migration requires assistance from experts, which can find and fix the causes of data discrepancies. So team members must have the necessary expertise and the appropriate knowledge of the business data. So I guess the question, who should form part of this expert team? So an organization's employees may be very good at what they do, but doesn't necessarily mean they're experts in data management, migration, or the governance of the data. They are the creators for sure and the consumers of the data, but they're not necessarily fully familiar with the best practices, the tools, processes of the services, templates, accelerators, the whole thing. So a data migration project often falls into the lap of IT, which may not be properly trained to manage it. Although IT might have the right tools, it doesn't necessarily mean that migration will happen smoothly. A migration tool used improperly can wind up moving bad data. So potentially it's that old adage of garbage in, garbage out. So make sure you know which resources you have in-house and which you need to outsource in order to ensure a fast, easy data migration project. Tip number 6. Get started early, basically. There's so much work to do on the data quality and the business rules, so there's no reason to wait for the target to be ready, actually, or even chosen. So, I mean, we often see that projects get delayed because the team only starts the work once the management has decided which system is the final target. However, you only need to know that migration project will come, and so you can start the preparations right up front. Regardless of the system you're migrating to or from, you need to have a thorough understanding of your current situation so you can be one step ahead once that particular project gets the green light. Understanding the quality of existing data, especially in the legacy system, is a huge pitfall that companies often don't spend enough time on. Questions to consider. Will the existing data support new users? What's missing? And what are you planning to do analysis-wise that you're not able to do today? A detailed assessment makes it easier for companies to estimate the amount of work required to migrate legacy data successfully, and completing this assessment simply takes time. All data has problems. That's a fact. Use data migration as an opportunity to clean up the data. You may have a lot of data to clean up front, so it may be too late to hit the deadline if you wait too long. So bottom line, yeah, get started early. Tip number 7, and this is our final tip, but I guess the watchword here is don't save this step until the end. You really need to make sure that you're validating and testing throughout this entire process. Without this, you can't be confident of the integrity of the data or indeed the project in its entirety. Here's some consideration points. How are you going to test the data? Who will test and evaluate it? Who will sign off on it? And who's the ultimate consumer of the data? This process must be built into the project's life cycle, but unfortunately companies don't often spend enough time aligning the data, testing, validation, and migration cycles to the project timeline. This is really of utmost importance. That, the people who sign off the validity of the data should be the business users. Data migration is a crucial operation with any enterprise, and failure could be absolutely catastrophic. So data migration projects have historically had a tendency to fail, unfortunately. According to Bloor research, as many as 60%, it's quite staggering really, do not succeed. But let's be positive. Let's focus on the characteristics of the 40% who do successfully complete a data migration project. And let's think about the processes that they have followed. Unfortunately, there's no magic formula to execute successfully a data migration project. However, as in any other project, success comes from doing things step by step. The first phase of a data migration project is to identify and explore the source systems. The most appropriate route for identification is to group the data, customer names, addresses, and product descriptions based on the target model. Although the source systems may contain thousands of fields, some might be duplicates or may not be applicable to the target system at all. So in this stage, it's critical to identify which data is required, where it is, as well as what data is redundant and not required for the migration. Conversely, if the initially identified sources do not contain all of the data required for the target model, a gap is identified. So in this case, you may have to consolidate data from multiple sources to create a record with the correct set of data to fulfill the requirements of the target. Phase 2, analysis. So the next logical phase to assess the quality of the source data. If the new system fails due to data inconsistencies, incorrect or duplicate data, there's very limited value in migrating data to the target system, of course. In the migration design phase, the main tasks will be to define the technical architecture and design of the whole migration process. In addition, you'll define the testing processes and how to transition them to the production system. In this phase, it's important to put your plans for the next 4 steps down on paper. So it includes things like timelines, technical details, any other concerns or approval, maybe you need additional approval requirements, so that the entire project will be documented. A typical sequence to follow when developing a migration is to subset the data and test one category of data at a time, e.g. product or customer. So this approach aligns with the first stage of the project, which through data exploration categorizes the data. In the case of larger projects, you can develop and test each category in parallel. Testing the migration solution is usually an iterative approach, of course. Start by checking the components individually in small subsets to ensure the mappings, transformations, and data cleansing routines are working. Then increase the data volumes and eventually link all the components together into a single migration job. Output from this phase results in a fully tested data migration process that is scalable, reliable, and can deliver the migration within the allotted time. After comprehensive testing, the time comes to run the migration itself. In the majority of cases, the source systems are shut down while the migration executes. To minimize the impact, this is likely to occur over a weekend or a public holiday, i.e. some downtime. So in some cases, where the source applications are required to run 24/7, 365, a zero downtime migration approach may be needed. Now, this requires a tool to provide the initial load processes with additional data synchronization technology to capture any changes that took place during the initial load. Then it requires synchronizing the source and the target data after the initial load finishes. Phase 6, transition. At some point after the data has been migrated, decide when to move to the new system and, where appropriate, retire the old system. During the execution phase, audit trails and logs will be created to ensure that all the data has been correctly migrated and, when appropriate, that the correct synchronization has been achieved. Finally, after reviewing the audit trails and logs, you'll be prepared to make the decision to transition users to the new system. Final phase now, production. As part of the design process, a system retirement policy will be created to address the old system. There'll also be ongoing data quality enhancements. Remember that because not all source systems will be retired, data quality issues may be identified and will need rectifying in several of the source systems. You'll need to manage ongoing improvements and monitor the data quality of the new system. There we go, sir.
Right.
Back to you.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Nick.
Pleasure.
Okay, so just to summarize everything that we've heard now, so we've got 7 great points, and it's time to actually start taking them away and starting your data migration project. First things first, you'll need to go away and get a plan together. Consider your individual targets, then consider the company's targets, and most importantly, consider each of the stakeholders that are going to be involved within this work plan. And having a plan and actually sticking to it can minimize the risk of data migration disasters in a huge way. Within this plan, you want to make sure that you outline all the tasks and, more importantly, all the milestones. So you've got something you can actually stick to. What I often find works for projects that I'm working on is to look at your completion date, your target completion date, so when you want to get everything finished, and then start working backwards. Most importantly, make sure every single stakeholder is aware of the overall milestones, as well as highlighting their individual milestones as well. Communication is obviously key. Lastly, you want to consider choosing a platform that will make the whole process run seamlessly and eliminate any disasters. There are several data migration solutions available. Most solutions are quite costly, often requiring a third party like a consultant or a system integrator to come in and manage the migration. This method is not only costly, but it can also be time consuming, and it can take time to coordinate and carry everything out. So just a little overview here on how Magic XPI platform can help in this whole data migration process. So Magic XPI provides an easy and cost-effective solution that enables you to successfully execute any data migration projects. Magic's integration platform takes care of all the difficult integration and optimization, like behind the scene, so you're free to concentrate on designing the best process flows to support your business goals. So Magic XPI actually ensures unrivaled connectivity, including over 100 pre-built components, certified and optimized adapters for leading IT systems, and then there's actually a connector builder for everything else. Okay. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening. So that takes us up to about 25 past. I think we've got time for a couple of questions. Sure. Nick, if you're okay to do that. So we've got, and if everyone wants to provide some questions, we've got one here that says, do you work with, do you have connectors for Sugar CRM?
For sure, we do. Yeah, we're seeing Sugar very much more these days, actually. And yes, quite right. We do have a pre-built certified adapter for Sugar. I mean, one of the benefits of having a certified adapter is that, you know, as there's a lot of work actually that goes on behind the scenes in terms of our relationship with the CRM vendor, in this case Sugar, to ensure that, you know, as, for example, in a real life scenario, Sugar gets upgraded, that the integration work through our connector ensures that it's a very quick, kind of expeditious route to ensure that as Sugar gets upgraded, then the integration work becomes automatically upgraded as well. And I think having that tight connection, that tight relationship with those vendors is absolutely key. Sugar's for sure, absolutely one of those. There are many others. I think you mentioned as well, Sarah, we've got over 100 pre-built certified connectors and adapters. So yeah, Sugar being one of those for sure. Maybe something to mention as well, I guess, you know, speed is absolutely key, and so there are, you know, we have template, if you like. So Sugar to SAP is a well-trodden path. So we find a lot of companies that, you know, need to migrate data between Sugar and SAP is a frequent request. So we've built a template, and that ensures a very quick integration process between those two environments. And yeah, works really well. Okay.
Thanks, Nick. Let me just see if I can find another question. Okay, I've got another question here. Yeah, it says, how long should a data migration project ideally take?
Good question. I mean, I suppose that is your classic length of string question. We typically see these sorts of projects going, cracking it from anything from a couple of weeks to, you know, maybe 3 to 4 months, actually, depending on the scale of the organisation, the complexity of the integrations that are required. I hope that, you know, through today's session, you'll see that this is a bit of a ready reckoner. You know, the tips to follow. If you work to the tips that we've kind of highlighted today, you know, that is a very good benchmark, a very good indicator to try and expedite the whole integration and migration process. But yeah, tricky one to answer. I mean, I think only through a bit of upfront investigation into each case will allow us to really you know, identify clearly how long a particular project is likely to take. But as I say, from us, really anything between a couple of weeks to 3 to 4 months at the outset.
Okay, there's also a question that says, is there a possibility to see a live demo? And I think with that, it's probably best if we arrange a follow-up call. If there's anyone else that also would like to have a follow-up and see this live, then my details are actually on the screen now. So if you can just reach out to me and request any demos, then we'll be happy to arrange something after this call.
Sure. I think it's a great call, actually. Yeah, I think nothing really speaks louder than a live demonstration. So let's do that. Let's set that as a follow-up action. I see another question from Thomas here. Thank you for that, Thomas. Yeah, so this is around you know, potentially even after data cleansing, it can take many iterations to successfully migrate data. Well, we hear you. I think we would have to take a look at your individual environment and requirements. But let's take that offline with you, Thomas, if that's okay. I think, again, sort of working through the sort of 7 tips is a good way of ensuring that I guess what we're doing here is providing some preparation, some background, and it's a bit of a check twice, cut once type approach. So make sure all of that preparation work is done up front in order that the time you come to execute the migration process, that it's done first time cleanly, successfully. So difficult to comment on that particular situation until, but we'll follow up with you directly, Thomas, and ensure that somebody in your local territory speaks to you about that.
Okay, right, that has actually taken us up to our half an hour mark, so I want to let everyone get off if you've got different meetings and stuff to be getting on with on this Friday. But yeah, thanks very much for everyone for attending. Thanks, Nick, for joining and providing all those insights. And like I said, my contact details are here if you need anything at all. And we'll be sending out a recording of this webinar as well. So yeah, thanks very much and have a great weekend, everyone.
Great. See you next time.